What you see here on the table is a Cold Steel Kukri Machete. And this is my review over it. I apologize, audience, which is very few and limited at this point, that I have not been putting any videos out there. I have one video, but I tried to upload 5 or 6 more. But my technology wasn't working, so I'm moving on to different, newer technologies, and we'll see how this review goes. Okay. First of all, I'd like to tell the audience what kind of format I'm going to be using for these reviews, and I don't want to be cheap, but I'm kind of going to use a nut and fancy-like format. I'm not going to copy them, of course, but, you know, I'll do it on my own twist, my own way, but I'm going to still use the same, like, talking point method. I'm going to use similar talking points, though some I'm not going to use, and others I'm going to add extra to. So, here we go. Let's try this first one. The Cold Steel Kukri Machete. First thing we need to establish is the category of this blade. Well, it's a machete, so naturally it's going to be a working blade. You know, you're going to do chores with this kind of thing. You're going to clear brush, you're going to maybe cut down saplings in your yard, or on your farm, or wherever it's needed. So, first and foremost, it's a tool. It's very good at its job. I have actually split oak logs with this knife, using the batoning method. And it served me very well. Now, this is definitely not the Cold Steel Gurkha Kukri, which, trust me, I wish I had one of those. As you can tell, it's much thinner in profile. But the advantage of that is it's much cheaper. $20. $20. Now, I got this one for free. It was a really interesting story. My mom's husband purchased a 4-wheeler from a fellow, and this was attached to it. And then my mom's husband decided to work with it in the yard a little bit, or actually I did, and then he took it, and he lost it in the yard, and then I found it a year later. How crazy is that? But after a year of being in the dirt and the rain and the elements, this is still what it's like. Its craton handle is excellent. I love its craton handle, though it does have a few like chips on the craton, you know, a few little wear marks. I'm okay with that because it was free for one, and it was outside for a year, so it's demonstrating the durability of the knife. I'm sorry. Back to category. Could it also be used defensively? Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wicked. I sharpened it paper cut sharp. Let me see if we can demo it. That was before I used it on this log, so. Paper cut. It's pretty good. And this is after using it on the logs. I'm not a good enough sharpener to get it shave sharp. That's just me. But I did also hear that the factory edge sucks, and that you're going to have to put a new edge on it anyways. I used, for this kukri, for this kukri machete, a V-sharpener like this, and the angle on this isn't good for shave sharpness. So, that sucks. Okay, so you can use it defensively. I wouldn't recommend using it as your primary defensive weapon or purposefully defensive. But, first and foremost, it's a tool of, what's the word? A tool used for chores. Something I've done with this, which is excellent, is I've taken this into the woods and used it as my primary woodsing knife. And what do I mean by that, woodsing knife? For example, if you look at the Banshee by Hanwei, I would consider that a great woodsing knife, even though it's a sword, because it acts, one, as a machete. You know, with that Banshee you can cut through limbs, vines, plants that are in your way. Two, you can use it defensively against humans or any other animal that may attack you, which is, you're more likely to be attacked by a human than an animal, to be perfectly honest. Three, the characteristics it has are specifically good in the wilderness. Its hard plastic materials and locking sheath, referring to the Banshee, are good for water resistance, and its blade, if I got one I'd probably Duracoat it, but its blade is good enough steel to be used, though I'd keep definitely a bit of oil on it. But I keep a little bit of oil on this too, because as you can see, over all that wear and tear, the coating is coming off, which I'm okay with. But this has similar qualities. It's very synthetic, and something synthetic in the woods means it's going to last a little longer, because it's not going to naturally degrade as much. It's got that heavy forward end. Even though it's thin, it still cuts great. Got that heavy forward cutting end for getting deep into the wood, deep into the flesh, or whatever you want to cut. Pretty good. Is it a stabber? I don't know if you can really focus on the tip there, but I find that it stabs well enough. I've stabbed through sheet metal with it. When I say sheet metal, I mean like tin and aluminum, not like sheet steel. But it does stab through tin and aluminum fairly well with and it kept its point okay. Yeah, it's got a few nicks on it. What can I say? First of all, I got it used. Second of all, it was in the yard for a year rusting. You know, under those conditions, it's lasted remarkably well. Okay, so we've established some purposes it can be used for. First and foremost, it's a tool. You're going to use it around the farm, around the house, to clean up your garden, clean up your backyard, clean up your farm, whatever. Secondly, I would classify it as a good woodsing knife, or a good woodsing blade, because woodsing blades don't have to be knives. It's often very good when they're not. So a good woodsing knife can be used to get through brush, defensive. It can be used for all sorts of woodsing needs, splitting wood, emergency situation. It's a good wood knife. And thirdly, it can be used defensively to harm someone if need be, such as in the role of a woodsing knife, you could use it defensively, or even in the role of a chore knife, you could use it defensively. Those odds are small that someone's going to attack you while you're in your yard doing chores with a big knife, but there they are. I wouldn't... If you want to use this because you're in a poor economic situation as your primary defensive tool, that's great too. I'd have two separate ones though, one for chores and one for primary defensive, because the edge on your primary defensive needs to be sharp at all times. So, I mean, all of your knives need to be sharp at all times, but what I'm saying is, if you use it in your yard on some wood or weeds or whatever, then that edge is going to be dull and you're not going to be able to use it for a defensive situation, and it's not going to be, you will be able to use it, but it won't be as sharp as it was before. Of course, you could sharpen it after every time you use it, which is always a good idea, but, you know, human nature, you forget, that kind of thing. Okay, those categories are out of the way. What next? An important factor to those categories is its price. So cheap. It's like 20 bucks. This allows people to have a high quality blade for not that big of a dollar. So people who have really bad cheap knives have no excuse for having bad, cheap knives, because there are good, cheap knives, as you can clearly see. Good steel. Specifics of the blade. Okay. The blade itself is a 12-inch blade. Excellent size for most utilitarian tasks. The handle's 5 inches, and it contours very well to the hand. It's got that traditional flared-out kukri butt. I love that. I love kukris. I'm going to be biased in this review because I love kukris. I find them to be an incredibly effective weapon and tool. But it contours to the hand perfectly. You got that craton handle. Could you hammer with the butt? Certainly. I wouldn't hammer anything with rough edges like nails, or maybe I maybe hammer some stakes into the ground, but other than that, unnecessary. Could you hammer it defensively? Yes. Alright, that is my initial review of the Cold Steel Kukri Machete. I know it was different than others, but you know, I like it a lot. Okay, Wolf sent